Hello, agus fáilte go trí seascad den program ag BBC Alba a taispeanach na boranich ingantach an is spórs na d'Alba. Is me Iona Ballantyne agus mi toilite fáilte chuúr ar sean Cluinnidh ar na d'Alba Emma Black a ras colorúm san stiúidio. Ar program na heiche noch, bruidhinnidh hínas Emma ar na gcuideachd a bhí mu choinneamh ball-coise an ban fo-stiùir in SPFL. Bheir sin sùil ar mar a chaidh dh'Alba an na Cupa Pinatar, agus bí sin na coinneamh grís a Cluinnidh ar Lisa Swanson a a-nis ag Chill Mheàrnaig as deich bliadhna Colliery Rangers. Emma, welcome back to 360.
Hi.
So much has happened and changed since you were last on. It feels like a whole new season, but it's actually not. But even actually just in the past week, let's start with the SWPL because there has been news. We've heard that they will be moving under the SPFL, under just totally moving away from Scottish women's football. Even just your initial reaction to that, what did you think when you heard the news?
Yeah, I think it's huge, isn't it? I mean, for me, there's been a lot of discussions going on for a number of months now between obviously the coaches, the managers and the clubs involved. For me, I think it's a welcome change. Of course it is, it's going to be huge for our game. Of course, we're obviously unsure of all the details of what it's going to involve, but for me, I think we've got to give credit to the SWF. I think they've done tremendous over the past number of years, and you know they've certainly grown the game, and you know they've been a huge boost to women's football. Of course they have, but for me, I think now we've got to go to that next level. We've got to go to that next step, and for me, the initial thought is, I think the SPFL will be able to do that. They will be able to enhance the women's game to where we want to be.
You've been involved in football for so long, in Scottish women's football for so long. You've played for so many years, and since you retired, you've still been involved. You're commentating on the games every week. You're doing the highlights programs. You know exactly what's going on. So for you, what changes would you like to see to the SWPL under the SPFL?
I think the SPFL, with the resources that they have and the financial backing that they have, and just the experience, of course, of governance football in a whole, I just think that I want to see more teams become professional. You know, we've obviously got the top three, Rangers, Celtic and Glasgow City, and I would like to see other teams become professional also. I think we've got like a mixture in our league, which is good, but for me it's not good if you want to grow the game, if you want to have more sponsorship involved, and if you want to have more publicity about the women's football in Scotland. I think we've got to have more teams being professional, and I think it will not only enhance girls football and women's football, but it also has a huge impact in international football. I think for me you've got to have, and we want to have the international team competing at regular major finals, at World Cups and Euros each time they come around.
That's the thing, Emma, because we can't compare the SWPL to this Women's Super League down south. It's like comparing the Scottish Premiership to the Premier League. It's so different. The difference in money is huge. But you know, it's like even years ago when you were playing, you saw just the professionalism down in England. Do you think we are anywhere near that up here?
I think we're still a little bit away of that. Maybe not a little bit, I think maybe a big bit away from that. Even when obviously we were playing friendlies, when I was at Glasgow City and we went down to Manchester City to play against, you know, and they actually just started to invest in their women's team, and it was huge, the resources that they have at their beck and call. And even now I think, yeah, they've got resources at Rangers, at Celtic and at Glasgow City up at Petershill, but I just still think we're still a wee bit away from where we obviously strive to be and where we want to be. And I think the gap between ourselves and the clubs down in England, I think it's still huge. And for me, obviously bringing the SPFL coming in and the majority of the teams and clubs voting for it, I think it's going to certainly enhance our game and try and close that gap just step by step.
Do you think there are any worries moving away from Scottish women's football? Not all clubs voted for this.
I think, yeah, of course there's going to be worries, isn't there? I don't think we know all of the details which was just going to be involved, and of course the SPFL are obviously they look after the men's teams, men's clubs, so it's certainly different for them also to bring in the women's section, and it's that uncertainty from clubs, and what impact will that have on clubs and players and managers alike? How will that look going forward next season? So I think there is uncertainty of the unknown.
And that's the thing, we don't have all the details. We don't know exactly how things are going to look when they do move over. there is perhaps talk of there not being any relegation from the top league this season. Do you think there's maybe, if that is the case, there's maybe a worry of losing those really competitive matches like we just had at the weekend between Partick Thistle and Spartans?
I think that maybe that edge of the game will be taken away in those matches. I think you know how tight it is at the bottom of that table, and it certainly adds to the excitement, as you said. Obviously each game coming towards the business end of the season, as we say, and I think it will lose those competitive edges. And as you've mentioned, the game against Partick Thistle and Spartans, it was a great advert for the women's game at the bottom half of that table.
All right, really interesting, Emma, thank you. We will be coming back to this. Seachtain mhór ahead of bhí the ball-coise na h-Alba leis an skipa náisiúnta a Cluinnidh Chaos in Spain. Hanna gemichin agus a Cluinnidh ar a bhí mescaite a cílchach nach do chéal iad leis a chupa gliad dh'Alba ras. Bheir sin sùil ras ar a chuite sear gan na trí gemichin in éana Cúmraí, Slovakia agus na Hungary.
We find room catas due the match for the challenge the Bheir Jane Ross due val Grimshaw chain the Muishin Farlatol Cleland face of Oxer Shokara Maris the Turl after that Jida for Leunia and the Nunia Varach Lana Cleland Mat the Mui Shiniana Pat Les my Yedig Howl after the Yano. Cúnamh bhí seo atá Céala Green agus Jenna Clark agus well. Am smín go dúad í bála sin a charéite de finish or Chechat Green dul go lá agus Clark a nila geran cús. Niste níte go tían fish lock an 5 agus ísal síos gan nóise. Cúnamh that you cool a ball sin Chechat BT agus Sabonach the hookja Viti a Tukshim has agus hata the Gora Magal fishlock Buchtaras the dish that you cool ball up agus fishlock leis dara tull in a game aikish. Engel Kumas a bui at mar sit a scuúlaigh sios gan a háisinin. Má cumas a duine an lo cuideachd Green chumala stay agus háda go stay a fostay. Agus a sin trúa go díos for Jenna 5 a fostay. Natasha Harding smína hu a súa ma gédig a sin a díos.
Maha nine kaya fish hasn't faking the curve cool faka ballisteach for weird shit agus ha isteach Abby Harrison leis here told the Genova dh'Alba here corum hiarst as a boxe agus Alba throw Abby Harrison gagal. Ciamar ascatol Maha agus ríist Weirs Emsley Cluinnidh Macála ballisteach agus balla ria.
foul. Sin Braziller, agus gacata, agus po finish, agus fashion. Smachgrunnig, Doherty Rash, is Effa Cummings, the channel. They can't the book that is your shin from Warson, Chideach, Gasavala, and I can finish for Gedic. Sophie Howard, Yachasuas, Nagish. Harrison, Shinna Shard. Looking to Cleland, up the Chuideachd, Lana Cleland, within your shin, Graham, I guess far line it. May Cummings, I guess first that she is Ganoshank, Sheenfleet. Year or two. Player Emsley lay Jill again. Oh, it's aching. Well, who had Biro, who wammer it to a dh'Alba, vikashe. Finish to the cellar. Jill again. We get the nail. I can get. Oof, very much a Tarsin. Now is a mach. I guess I do it after Cummings, Rutikin in the shin. I guess I'm not in Yisha Gretchen. Sam Kerr, Coram, Alapa, Hood, Ed Hoshach. Kerr, Chachgali, Sochgad, Kielach. I guess Shin, Snop, Yishal Shias, Ganoshank. Loretta. Julian Meichis is live Glee. The cast Glee heet de Jechen die zogen de stui. Oh, we zijn er gezegd. Terug voor de financiële. We nemen het de trapse. En je zat het daar voor de finish. Gezegd. Cleland, de naai te galoppen. I guess gaan nu nog eens goed Sam Carey. I guess als je het galoppen goed. Zie je nu het hasje. Amy Shaw de stuit. Savannah Maha. Oh, is Oliver Cummings. Hij het galoppen goed trooien. I guess galoppen in de kookje waardje gelijk.
Emma, 2 wins out of 3, but does it feel good enough?
For me, no, in my opinion it doesn't. I think going into this mini tournament, the teams, the countries that we were up against, I think for me we should be winning all 3 games, and you know, considering it was just a couple of years ago that we had actually won that cup, and so for me I think yeah, it's good for obviously the players to be involved and to have those 10 days away together as a group is fantastic, of course it is, and to get minutes into the legs, but for me I just feel that we should be doing better in those 3 games.
If we look at the Wales game, it was a 3-1 defeat. Scotland did go ahead. What was it, just a couple of minutes later, Wales got the equaliser, and then Scotland conceded another 2 goals in the second half. What did you make of that performance? What actually went wrong there? Is that a game that Scotland should have been winning?
Yeah, I think so. I think first and foremost you have to look at obviously the personnel that was selected. You know, it's, yeah, of course Pedro's looking to experiment with his group of players that he'd selected to travel, and experimented with the formation as well, and then changing it to a back 3. And you know, the first half I felt maybe we were under a little bit of pressure. However, you know, once you put Caroline Muir on the ball and she's looking to create something, and she obviously started the phase of play obviously for Lana Cleland to get her goal, and it was a fantastic goal, and I just thought, yeah, we'll be able to push on and obviously try and get more goals and keep a clean sheet, and unfortunately it fell away from us, and then we made more changes in the second half, and you just kind of lost momentum, and I just feel that formation in that game didn't quite suit us.
And even looking back there, you see the defensive errors. What does Scotland even need to do now?
I think it's difficult, you know. I think we've obviously got huge games coming up, haven't we? The World Cup qualifier against Ukraine in April away, that's a massive game, and I think for me those 10 days away could have been something that we could work towards the Ukraine game in terms of can you get a settled back five almost, you know, and you just build from there. And of course there's huge players missing as well, you know, Rachel Corser was struggling and she came in to camp midway through, and Erin Cuthbert was missing, Lisa Evans was missing, Rachel Boyle was missing, so those are huge players that have still to come back in, and we've still got a huge and an influential core group of players, but it's just trying to replace those players when they're not available, and I think that's going to be difficult for us. And as I said, the Ukraine game's huge coming up, and I just feel that we've got to do better in preparation for that game.
Who would you ideally like to see in that back five for these World Cup qualifiers?
I think Leigh Alexander selects herself. You know, she's our number one for me, and you know, Rachel McLaughlin was missing also in that camp. She's been playing at right back. Rachel Boyle can also play there at right back. So I think that's obviously, I think these two girls are fighting that out, and you've got Kirsty Smith there. And I think the middle two, the centre backs picked themselves, and Rachel Corsie and Jenny Beattie and Nicola Docherty for me at left back. I think you'd be looking at those players for selection, and then you obviously build forward from there. I feel that the number 6 position in front of the back four, I think Pedro himself's unsure of actually who's the best personnel to play there, and yeah, he's experimented in these 3 games, but I'm still not quite sure that he actually knows who's suitable for that position.
That's the thing, because even though it's a friendly tournament and it is an opportunity for all these players to get experience, to get game time, you know how crucial it is to actually have a winning team from the get-go for these mini tournaments, for these friendly games. So they've got that mentality for the crucial World Cup qualifiers coming up. Yeah,
I just think it's great that he's introducing new players, of course it is, and of course Kelly Clark got her first cap in this camp, and it's fantastic to see that. It's fantastic to see new players bed in, but for me, you know, it's vitally important for our national team, because form hasn't been great of recent performances, and you know, missing out in the Euros. So I feel that these World Cup qualifiers coming up and getting that playoff position is vitally important, and we've got to have a group of players that are willing obviously to go and progress in the national team, and I think we do have that, but it's just getting the personnel correct and the formation correct on the pitch.
Well, following that defeat against Wales, it was a victory over Slovakia and then a win on penalties over Hungary. They're games though that you would expect Scotland to comfortably win.
Yeah, we scored 2 goals, didn't we? But I feel that we could have scored more goals. I think it was good that we reverted back to the formation that suits most players in the 4-3-3, and that worked for us. We could have got on the score sheet. Of course, we could have got more goals, but it's good for morale. It was vitally important that we did pick up the win in that game, and we did score 2 goals, and it set us up nicely going into the game against Hungary for the 5th and 6th playoff positions in the mini tournament. But for me, against Hungary, I think we let ourselves down again with the performance levels. I think, you know, considering that we've just beaten Hungary in a back-to-back in the World Cup qualifiers over the 2 games, I feel that we should have been winning that game also.
Well, a lot of work to do, Emma, thank you. Ifrúchlí ball-coise bhachan garage can ich sinni Cluinnidh ar Chill Mheàrnaig Lisa Swanson. Can land due she Lisa and chaidh badge Cluinnidh Rangers ach h-Alba fiachan ri Chill Mheàrnaig a thuairsiúis ag an Phríomh League. Ha cuideachd Bhí Mheoracha ar Gamnan ban a glúsad bhfuil bhreatach in SPFL.
A Pinatar Chill Mheàrnaig Lisa Swanson bhí a Cluinnidh ball-coise bhna bhaid bliadhna. Agus éiad fástas Lisa go gaiching on the ball-coise ban dh'Alba bhnuair sin.
Well, I came here as a kid. I was here at about 13 to 16, so I spent 3 years here. Before that, I used to just play football in the street. I grew up in Saltcote, so I used to just play on the streets there every single day. I played in a boys team in Saltcote United. That was my first ever team. Used to get beat every week, but I still loved it. I still love going along. So since then, I know Ray Montgomery for Saltcote. He's obviously like a legend at this club, and he's friends with my dad. I think he put a word in for me at Kilmarnock, and that's how I ended up here as a 13-year-old.
Ring Lisa Gleva sa chiad uair the bheith Colladí Kilmarnock, agus an a 2007 who di corm a golch an a club I the bheile chomésal, Rangers.
For me, it was unreal. As a kid, I used to complain all the time to my nana, it's no fair, I don't get to play with Rangers, because they never had a female set up at the club at all until 2007, and that's when I signed. So because of that, my nana got me into the Rangers soccer schools when I was about 10, 11, and at that point that was the closest I was ever going to get to Rangers. So to obviously go from that to spending 11 years at the club, it was unreal. It's no secret I'm obviously a Rangers fan, so to grow up supporting the team, and you love the club, to go on and play 11 years there, it was unreal.
Ga Lisa Rangers a siwi in the Blingiad, agus a siwi Cleich House and Newline, agus Spellach Colladí Hearts, Healy a Dasha Kilmarnock, for an the Horshich a Hulashia.
I thought I'd be at Rangers forever. I used to say to the managers, just sign me for life because I'm not going anywhere else. But obviously things have changed, things have happened. But coming here, I wouldn't change it for the world. I've loved my time here. I came here on loan in 2018 and I loved every minute of it. I fell in love with football all over again when I came back here on loan. So if I was going to go anywhere and finish my career, it was always going to be here if it wasn't going to be Rangers. Coming from the top league down to this league, there wasn't much difference at all. To be honest, I found this league a bit more difficult because game to game, it was unpredictable, results were unpredictable. Whereas in the top league, you kinda know. So you do who's going to win and whatever. You can do all the preparation in the world and train 24 hours a day if you want, but you still know the outcome of what the games are going to be. Whereas this league's a lot different.
Bheir Hanach Neach can be an SWPL a dolfo vrachtach an SPFL. Agus ha Lisa an dochas go bhfuil sin a cíalachach go nuair an clubichin ainiachach agus taich go bharach gain.
I think so. I can only be more competitive, and I think that's what they're pushing for, because I think when you look at the top teams, the teams are getting paid. There's a massive gap to every other club basically in Scotland, so I'm hoping that they can bridge the gap by merging the leagues. Hopefully that will bring more kind of recognition and support to the other teams as well, because it does seem like the SWPL1 do get a lot of recognition, and I think other teams maybe fall under the radar a wee bit, but hopefully now every club can maybe get kind of the sort of same recognition and support. I think I've played about 15, 16 years in women's football. I grew up with players like Jane Somerville, Megan Snedden, played against Rhonda Jones. These are all top players that have got unreal amounts of cash for their country, and then I kind of grew up in the middle, so I've then grew up with younger players that are maybe not getting things handed to them, but they've maybe not have to work as hard as the top players, because we were training on public parks and things like that. You'd never hear of that now, really. Everybody's kind of got their own facility. I was unheard of when I was coming into the game. So.
Han Cluinnidh ai cuideachd a géirí imireach a háirtéad chó cuideachmachs a hasún Cluinnidh agus slán changing, mar a lenas vas a dhéan.
Aye, definitely. Mental health is obviously massive. There is more support, but I still think it could be a little bit better. I've had my own experiences with that, where I've had to go to club doctors and I've been getting help with sports psychologists. Dr. Paul Jackson at Rangers helped me quite a lot. But I don't know if every other club have that. I do know each team now has a team chaplain who you can go to and speak to. I've used them as well. But I think it's more about, I think the clubs need to enforce it as well and just make players aware, look, there is people here you can speak to, and that is so important.
Ha go leor hástí híon do Kilmarnock an téisansa, a chan Lisa a smúneachach cús me dhéon sin an drásta.
I know it's probably a boring, typical football answer, but we can't look too far ahead. We just need to take it a game at a time. I think for us, we've not had the best kind of start to the season. We're only halfway through it, so we have got time to change that, and we'll do everything we can to change that. But for us, we just need to focus on each game as it comes, and then we've obviously got Hearts as well away in the Scottish Cup, so we've got all that to look forward to. And I think for us, it's just about enjoying it as well, and just see how far we can go.
Ha dríach an the ball-coise gudid do Cluinnidh agus a fís cháinne ag Lisa do Cluinnidh an áca.
Enjoy it the best you can. I think I've kind of always had that in my head anyway. think I've ever took it for granted where I am, and I do feel lucky that I've been able to play this length of time. I've got players in this team right now who have had 2 ACL injuries and are just coming back, and I'm quite lucky I've never had to go through anything like that. So I'd say to other players, like younger players coming through, just enjoy every second you can and just don't take it for granted, because I'm coming to the end now. I'm 30 years old now, so I've not got much time left, so I just enjoy it the best you can.
Emma, there were some really interesting parts there that I'm sure you can really understand, even what Lisa was saying about growing up and playing on public parks. Can you just even tell us your experience of that?
Yeah, I certainly can. You know, I've experienced that also, not just in public parks, but also the old gym halls that you used to get at high schools, and we used to use the bench as goals. And that was, I recall it, first joining Glasgow City when I was 16. That's where we used to train, and obviously as time evolved and obviously we tried to introduce more professionalism, we then actually had to travel to dh'Alba once a week from Glasgow.
How long did that take you?
It was 45 minutes there and 45 minutes back, and yeah, it was a school at dh'Alba, and we used to train at because it was only the good facility that we had, and you know, Eddie Willecki was the manager at that time, and he came from that way up in the East Coast, so yeah, we managed to get a training facility there, and you know, we used to all car share up, and
who did you car share with?
Car shared with Suzanne Lappin, Rochelle Littlejohn and Laura Williamson at times, and
that is a good car.
Yeah, that's a good car, and at times we used to on the way home from training there was a chip shop nearby, and we used to try and sneak in on the way home so Eddie didn't see us when he was driving by.
Did he catch you? He caught you once?
Yeah, he caught us once, yeah, which wasn't good, but yeah, managed to just get back in the car and race back down the road.
It actually just shows you that in real terms of how much has changed, because actually we were talking as well about when you used to go away with the Champions League. Even tell us about your trip to Serbia.
Yeah, we went on a trip to Serbia, and the food wasn't so good in the hotel, and I recall there was a McDonald's across the road from the hotel, and it was the same culprits. It was me, Russia,
there's a theme here,
and Suzanne Lappin. There was a McDonald's across the road, and we'd thought, yeah, let's go across one afternoon, and then we'd actually seen Eddie walking towards and coming towards us, so me and Russia had jumped into the kids' ball pit in the play area, and Suzanne Lappin was hiding also, so we wouldn't get caught.
You didn't get caught?
No, didn't get caught.
Although does Eddie know that now?
He knows that now, yeah, but you know, that's obviously what we did back then, and you got away with it, but now of course you certainly wouldn't get away with those types of behaviours that we had done.
It does just show how, I mean, that just put into perspective how much has changed. You've gone from gym halls to actually playing professionally in SWPL1. It's quite a remarkable change, and actually one that you hope as time goes on clubs in SWPL2 can move up to that too.
Yeah, I mean the resources that are the players that have and the clubs have are certainly incredible. Back to obviously even when I was playing just a few years ago, that you know the girls at Rangers are at the Rangers Training Centre, and then Celtic have got a fantastic facility also in Glasgow City, and you know it's fantastic to see, you know, and the girls merit that. You know, it's great to see how much it's evolved, but for me I think it could be done a little bit quicker. You know, it's taken a long time to get to that stage, and for me, the SWPL2 is still a long way away, even from the SPL1. I think the resources and the finance that the SWPL teams have aren't quite there yet. So I think it's difficult. There is still a gap between both leagues.
It's interesting because you even see the differences in the teams that did come up from SWPL2, because Hamilton, it has been a hard season for them. Even if you look at Aberdeen and Partick Thistle, things are going still better for them. So you know that there's a big jump when you come up still. Yeah,
I think it's a huge jump, and as you've mentioned, you can see just with the likes of Hamilton, you know, they haven't won a game yet and they're rooted to the bottom of the table, and it's huge and they are finding it extremely difficult. However, you look at the likes of Partick Thistle, you look at Hearts, you look at Aberdeen, you know, they're certainly maturing as the season's going on, and I think it also comes down to the recruitment of players. You know, the recruitment that Partick Thistle have done is tremendous. You know, they've brought in players who have played in SWPL1 before and to have that experience, and I think that's vitally important. And you know, Hearts have obviously went and handpicked their manager, and she's done fantastic for them, and you know, they've got a group of under-19s international players at Hearts where they train together, they play together, and at an international level and at club level, and they've introduced obviously extra sessions, and that's been fantastic for them, and also the likes of Aberdeen as well. You know, they're evolving also, and they're certainly adapting to life in the SWPL1 better than what Hamilton have. So yeah, it is a huge jump for me. It certainly is going from SWPL2 to SWPL1.
But scorelines we have seen this season, especially in top league scorelines, have been much tighter, because last season there was still quite a big gap from those top teams.
Yeah, it is, and you know, that's obviously down to the teams at the lower end of the table. You know, you can look at all of the teams, obviously Motherwell as well. You know, I think they've done fantastically well, and it's just about instilling the players' professionalism at training. You know, how do you live your life off the pitch, on the pitch? Do you want to be at training? Do you not want to be at training? And it's changing the mindset. And I think for any player, if you've got anything about you, you don't want to go and compete against the likes of Celtic, Rangers, Glasgow City if you've not prepared properly throughout the full week of that training, or not being at training, where, you know, maybe of course there's still work commitments that players have, there's college, there's university, but it's also having that within yourself, saying, do you want to be at that level? Do you want to be able to compete, or are you just playing for fun?
Well, before we finish up this week, there is a big game coming up this weekend. Celtic and Rangers are back in action against each other. Do you think, it'd be good actually just to hear your thoughts, do you think this could be a game that could change the course of a team for the season should they win?
Yeah, I think so. I think for Celtic, it's a team that you can't write off. You know, they've proven that last season, and obviously this season so far, coming off the back of the defeat to Glasgow City and then beating Rangers in the Cup. You know, it's a team that they're certainly willing to fight, and they know exactly what they want for this season. You know, they want to get their hands on another trophy, they want to get to Champions League football again. So, you know, they're up there still for the fight, and it's a really, really important game for both sets of teams this Sunday. And not just that game, I think you've got to look at this Glasgow City and Hibs game as well. You know, it's the top four coming against each other, and Hibs are well aware of taking points off anyone else.
Do you think, it's a big question, but do you think it's the season that Glasgow City might not retain the title?
I think it'll be a difficult task for them. I think, for me, I think Rangers are on the front foot at this moment in time. You know, they're the driving force, and you know, they're sitting at the top of the table with a game in hand, and you know, they've got their goals in place, and they're keeping everything in-house, and they're really driven because they know they've got to be successful this year, considering the disappointment that they had last season. So they know that group of players, they've got to be successful, they've got to get their hands on that league title or get to the Champions League, and the players are well aware of that, the pressure that they're under. Okay,
well, it's a very exciting one to keep an eye on. We will actually revisit this probably before the end of the season. Thanks very much, Emma, for joining us this week.
Thank you.
Well, sin air san anoch in a cheach gain be heather Lockhart call rooms in studio. Jen Keenchach go bhil length in BBC Alba YouTube ar son a hula fis go cheangailtear trí seascad ain. Agus na cáilíomh na hair híain an seachcinsa ar BBC Alba le skipper rugby na Halba a cloich an a game Genevieve Cupa na Cluinnidh agus Rangers in a Celtic and sa game Bheir ag Milloch SWPL a hin. Mar sin live an dras.